a WikiVidi documentaries production. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Enjoy. Dagestan. Dagestan, officially the Republic of Dagestan, is a federal subject of Russia, located in the North Caucasus region. Its capital and largest city is Makhachkala, centrally located on the Caspian Sea coast. With a population of 2,910,249, Dagestan is very ethnically diverse and Russia's most heterogeneous republic, with the largest ethnicity constituting less than 30% of the population. Largest among the ethnicities are the Avar, Dargin, Kumyk, Lezgian, Laks, Azerbaijani, Tabasaran, and Chechen. Ethnic Russians comprise about 3.6% of Dagestan's total population. Russian is the primary official language and the lingua franca among the ethnicities. Dagestan has been a scene of Islamic insurgency, occasional outbreaks of separatism, and ethnic tension since the 1990s. According to the International Crisis Group, the militant Islamist organization Shariat Jamaat is responsible for much of the violence. Much of the tension is rooted in an internal Islamic conflict between traditional Sufi groups advocating secular government and more recently introduced Salafist teachers preaching the implementation of a certain form of Sharia in Dagestan. Its government was dissolved in a major corruption investigation on 5 February 2018. And the region has since been under the direct control of the Russian government. Toponymy. The word Dagestan is of Turkish and Persian origin. The Turkish word means mountain, and the Persian suffix stan means land. Some areas of Dagestan were known as Albania, Lezgian, Avar, and Tarkov at various times. Between 1860 and 1920, Dagestan was referred to as Dagestan Oblast, corresponding to the southeastern part of the present-day republic. The current borders were created with the establishment of the Dagestan Autonomous Soviet Socialist Republic in 1921, with the incorporation of the eastern part of Terek Oblast, which is not mountainous, but includes the Terek littoral at the southern end of the Caspian Depression. Mountains. Most of the republic is mountainous, with the Greater Caucasus Mountains covering the south. The highest point is the Bazardazu/Bazarduzu peak at 4,470 meters on the border with Azerbaijan. The southernmost point of Russia is located about 7 kilometers southwest of the peak. Other important mountains are Diklozmter, Gora Adlashuk Jelmezra, and Gora Dautidag. Early First Millennium. In the first few centuries AD, Caucasian Albania became a vassal and eventually subordinate to the Parthian Empire. With the advent of the Sasanian Empire, it became a satrapy within the vast domains of the empire. In later antiquity, it was a few times fought over by the Roman Empire and the Sassanid Persians as the former sought to contest the latter's rule over the region, without success. Over the centuries, to a relatively large extent, the peoples within the Dagestan territory converted to Christianity alongside Zoroastrianism. In the 5th century AD, the Sassanids gained the upper hand, and by the 6th AD constructed a strong citadel at Derbent, known henceforward as the Caspian Gates, while the northern part of Dagestan was overrun by the Huns, followed by the Caucasian Avars. During the Sasanian era, southern Dagestan became a bastion of Iranian culture and civilization, with its center at Derbent, and a policy of Persianization can be traced over many centuries. Islamic influence. In 664, the Persians were succeeded in Derbent by the Arabs, who in the 8th century repeatedly clashed with the Khazars. Although the local population rose against the Arabs of Derbent in 905 and 913, Islam was eventually adopted in urban centers, such as Samandar and Kubachi, from where it steadily penetrated into the highlands. By the 15th century, Albanian Christianity had died away. leaving a 10th-century church at Daytana as the sole monument to its existence. Alternating Persian and Russian rule. As Mongolian authority gradually eroded, new centers of power emerged in Kaitagi and Taki. In the early 16th century, the Persians reconsolidated their rule over the region, which would, intermittently, last till the early 19th century. In the 16th and 17th centuries, legal traditions were codified and mountainous communities obtained a considerable degree of autonomy. The Russians intensified their hold in the region for the first time in the 18th century, when Peter the Great annexed maritime Dagestan from Safavid Persia in the course of the Russo-Persian War. The territories were however returned to Persia in 1735 per the Treaty of Ganja. Between 1730 and the early course of the 1740s, following his brother's murder in Dagestan, the new Iranian ruler and military genius Nader Shah led a lengthy campaign in swaths of Dagestan in order to fully conquer the region, which was met with considerable success. Although he was eventually inflicted several decisive defeats by various of the ethnic groups of Dagestan, forcing him to retreat with his army. From 1747 onwards, the Iranian-ruled part of Dagestan was administered through the Darbent Khanate, with its center at Darbent. The Persian expedition of 1796 resulted in the Russian capture of Darbent in 1796. However, the Russians were again forced to retreat from the entire Caucasus following internal governmental problems, allowing Iran to capture the territory again. Russian rule consolidated. In 1806 the Khanate voluntarily submitted to Russian authority, but it was not until the aftermath of the Russo-Persian War that Russian power over Dagestan was confirmed, and that Qajar Iran officially ceded the territory to Russia. In 1813, following Russia's victory in the war, Iran was forced to cede southern Dagestan with its principal city of Darbent, alongside other vast territories in the Caucasus, to Russia, conforming with the Treaty of Gulistan. The 1828 Treaty of Turkmenchay indefinitely consolidated Russian control over Dagestan and removed Iran from the military equation. Risings against Imperial Russia. The Russian administration, however, disappointed and embittered the Highlanders. The institution of heavy taxation, coupled with the expropriation of estates and the construction of fortresses, electrified Highlanders into rising under the aegis of the Muslim Imamate of Dagestan, led by Ghazi Muhammad, Gamzat Bek and Shamil. This Caucasian war raged until 1864. Dagestan and Chechnya profited from the Russo-Turkish War to rise together against Imperial Russia for the last time. Soviet era. On the 21st of December 1917, Ingushetia, Chechnya, and Dagestan declared independence from Russia and formed a single state called the United Mountain Dwellers of the North Caucasus, which was recognized by major world powers. The capital of the new state was moved to Temir Khan Shura. The first prime minister of the state was Tapachermoyev, a prominent Chechen statesman. The second prime minister was an Ingush statesman Vasan Azerbaijani, who in 1917 also became the author of the constitution of the land, and in 1920 was re-elected for a third term. After the Bolshevik Revolution, Ottoman armies occupied Azerbaijan and Dagestan, and the region became part of the short-lived mountainous Republic of the Northern Caucasus. After more than 3 years of fighting the White Movement and local nationalists, the Bolsheviks achieved victory and the Dagestan Autonomous Soviet Socialist Republic was proclaimed on January 20, 1921. Nevertheless, Stalin's industrialization largely bypassed Dagestan and the economy stagnated stagnated, making the republic the poorest region in Russia. Post-Soviet era. In 1999, an Islamist group from Chechnya, led by Shamil Basayev and Ibn al-Khattab, launched a military invasion of Dagestan, with the aim of creating an independent Islamic state of Dagestan. The invaders were driven back by the Russian military. As a retaliation, Russian forces subsequently re-invaded Chechnya later that year. Violence in the republic exploded from the beginning of 2010 to the end of 2012. This upsurge led many people to claim that Dagestan was about to enter into a situation of sectarian civil war. Dagestan became the epicenter of violence in the North Caucasus, with Makhachkala, Kaspisk, Dargin, Hasivyurt, Kislia, Sergokala, Untitled, and Tsumada all becoming hotbeds of militant activities. Politics. The Parliament of Dagestan is the People's Assembly, consisting of 72 deputies elected for a 4-year term. The People's Assembly is the highest executive and legislative body of the Republic. The Constitution of Dagestan was adopted on the 10th of July 2003. According to it, the highest executive authority lies with the State Council, comprising representatives of 14 ethnicities. The members of the State Council are appointed by the Constitutional Assembly of Dagestan for a term of 4 years. The State Council appoints the members of the government. The ethnicities represented in the State Council are Avars, Dargins, Kumyks, Lezgians, Laks, Azerbaijanis, Tabasarans, Russians, Chechens, Nogais, Igals, Ruchels, Zarkas, and Tats. Formally, the chairman of the State Council was the highest executive post in the Republic, held by Magomed Ali Magomedovich Magomedov until 2006. On the 20th of February 2006, the People's Assembly passed a resolution terminating this post and disbanding the State Council. Russian President Vladimir Putin offered the People's Assembly the candidature of Muku Aliyev for the newly established post of the President of the Republic of Dagestan. The nomination was accepted by the People's Assembly, and Muku Aliyev became the first President of the Republic. On the 20th of February 2010, Aliyev was replaced by Magomed Salam Magomedov. The current head of the Republic is Ramazan Abdullatipov. Demographics. Because its mountainous terrain impedes travel and communication, Dagestan is unusually ethnically diverse, and still largely tribal. It is Russia's most heterogeneous republic. Dagestan's population is rapidly growing. Population. Ethnicities. The people of Dagestan include a large variety of ethnicities. According to the 2010 census, Northeast Caucasians make up almost 75% of the population of Dagestan. Turkic peoples, Kumyks, Azerbaijanis, and Nogais make up 21%, and Russians 3.6%. Other ethnicities each account for less than 0.4% of the total population. It should be noted that such groups as the Botlik, the Andi, the Ukvuks, the Tsez, and about 10 other groups were reclassified as Avars between the 1926 and 1939 censuses. The indigenous ethnicities of Dagestan are in bold. There are also 40 or so tiny groups such as the Hinuk, numbering 439, or the Ukvuks, who are members of a complex family of indigenous Caucasians. Notable are also the Hunzab Kansala people who live in only 4 towns in the interior. Languages. More than 30 local languages are commonly spoken, most belonging to the Northeast Caucasian language family. Russian became the principal lingua franca in Dagestan during the 20th century. Over 20 of Russia's 131 endangered languages as identified by UNESCO can be found in Dagestan. Most of these endangered languages have Dagestani speakers in the mountainous region on the Dagestan-Georgia border. Prior to Soviet rule, The literary lingua franca status to some extent belonged to Classical Arabic. The northern Avar dialect of Kumyk has also served as a lingua franca in mountainous Dagestan where Avar-related peoples lived. And throughout centuries the Kumyk language had been the lingua franca for the bigger part of the Northern Caucasus, from Dagestan to Kabada, until the 1930s. Kumyk also had been an official language for communication of Russian imperial administration with the local peoples. The first Russian grammar written for Dagestani languages was that for locally international Kumyk. Author Timofey Makarov wrote, Religion. According to a 2012 survey, 83% of the population of Dagestan adheres to Islam, 2.4% to the Russian Orthodox Church, 2% to Caucasian folk religion and other native faiths, 1% are non-denominational Christians. In addition, 9% of the population declares to be spiritual, but not religious, 2% is atheist and 0.6% follows other religions or did not answer the question. Dagestanis are largely Sunni Muslims, of the Shafi'i rites. That has been in place for centuries. On the Caspian coast, particularly in and around the port city of Dargin, the population is Shia. There is also a Salafi population, which is often a target of official repression. A relatively large number of native Tati-speaking Jews, the Mountain Jews, were also present in this same coastal areas. However, since 1991 and the collapse of the Soviet Union, they have migrated to Israel and the United States. These were an extension of much larger Azerbaijani Jewish community across the border in the Azerbaijani districts of Kuba and Shamaki. The appearance of Sufi mysticism in Dagestan dates back to the 14th century. The two Sufi tariqas that spread in the North Caucasus were the Naqshbandiya and the Qadiriyya. The mystic tariqas preached tolerance and coexistence between the diverse people in the region. The communist total intolerance for any religion after the Communist Revolution of 1917 also suppressed the Sufi movements. Sheikh Said Effendi al-Cherkawi was a prominent scholar, spiritual leader and murshid of Naqshbandi and Shadili tariqas in Dagestan until his death. The number of Christians among the non-Slavic indigenous population is very low, with estimates between 2,000 and 2,500. Most of these are Pentecostal Christians from the Lak ethnicity. The largest congregation is Ozana Evangelical Christian Church in Makhachkala, with more than 1,000 members. Economy. The major industries in Dagestan include oil production, engineering, chemicals, machine building, textile manufacturing, food processing, and the timber. Oil deposits are located in the narrow coastal region. The Dagestani oil is of high quality and is delivered to other regions. Dagestan's natural gas production goes mostly to satisfy local needs. Agriculture is varied and includes grain farming, viticulture and winemaking, sheep farming, and dairying. The engineering and metalworking industries own 20% of the Republic's industrial production assets and employ 25% of all industrial workers. Dagestan's hydroelectric power industry is developing rapidly. There are 5 power plants on the Suluk River providing hydroelectric power. It has been estimated that Dagestan's total potential hydroelectric power resources are 4.4 billion kilowatt. Dagestan has a well-developed transportation system. Railways connect the capital Makhachkala to Moscow, Astrakhan, and the Azerbaijani capital, Baku. The Moscow-Baku highway also passes through Dagestan, and there are air links with major cities. Conditions for economic development are favorable in Dagestan. But the Republic's low starting level for a successful transition to market relations, in addition to rampant corruption, has made the region highly dependent on its underground economy and the subsidies coming from the central Russian government. Corruption in Dagestan is more severe than in other regions of the former Soviet Union and is coupled with a flourishing black market and clan-based economic system. In 2011, Rostelecom started implementation of WDM-based equipment on the backbone network for data transmission in the Republic of Dagestan. Due to WDM introduction, the fiber optic communication line's bandwidth increased to 2.5 gigabits per second. Rostelecom invested about 48 million rubles in the project. Brought to you by WikiVidi documentaries. Would you like to know more?